All right, so we're live. In this live stream, I wanted to take a look at the Vote Blue No Matter Who debate. It's really heated up as of late with names like Kulinski and Krystal, but I wanted to take a historic look at this debate as well. It's very interesting to hear what the debate was, and to his credit, Jimmy Dore, back during the Clinton election, was one of the few people that were saying, you know what? Vote blue no matter who is not going to work for me. They cheated Bernie Sanders out of the election, so I'm going to vote for the Green Party. And then I want to take a look at how this debate has shifted, what voices, David Pakman, are still on the side of vote blue no matter who, and then what voices now are coming around to Jimmy Dore's point of view. But let's first listen to what the debate sounded like a few years ago.
If you're an environmentalist, if you want to re-regulate Wall Street, if you're for less war, if you're for fighting climate change, if you're against fracking, if you're in that movement, that the Democratic Party offers you a graveyard, that you're going to have to fight those same people. So I agree with Chris Hayes and Ben Howe from RedState.com that if Donald Trump is president, he fractures the Republican Party. Paul Ryan is not going to usher through his agenda. He's such an incompetent. There will be all nothing but scandal, 100%. He will be ineffectual. He won't be able to get anything done. And in 2 years, we flipped the Congress, we flipped the Senate to Democrat. We could do it right now if Hillary was a little smarter. Number two, and then in 4 years, we get a real Democrat instead of a fake liberal who's going to push Republican policies. And as far as the Supreme Court goes, right now, I've already laid it out a million times. Right now, I say the Democrats.
So this debate is one in which the way it was framed back then is, what are you going to do about the Supreme Court? If Donald Trump wins the election, what are you going to the Supreme Court, he'll have the ability to nominate 2 or 3 different judges. That debate is a little bit different now because he has already nominated 2, but that is where the debate was back then. Well, if you vote third party, what is going to happen if Donald Trump does become president? So let's continue to listen to this.
Can do what the Republicans are doing. I know they're not filibustering, but what they're doing is they're not filling the seat on purpose. And you think that the public opinion will have make them compromise. Anyway, I'm saying that we can do what the Republicans are doing. You're advocating for more spineless liberalism and roll over and take it. I'm saying let's fight the power now because we're going to have to fight the power no matter what. We're going to have to fight Hillary to get rid of more wars. We're going to have to fight Hillary to get rid of fracking. We're going to have to fight Hillary to re-regulate Wall Street. So that's my position. I appreciate you letting me make it, and I understand that you think I'm uninformed, and I don't think that of you. I think you're very informed. I think we just disagree, and I was kidding. I think you're more handsome than me.
Well, I think we look very similar, frankly, and I know we buy all our clothes and get our glasses at the same place. I mean, I think it's people would have trouble picking us out of a lineup. I mean, yeah. I think. There it is. I mean, people can assess whether or not the chances of the Democrats taking back the Senate in 2 years, whether or not.
So then Sam Sedar goes into what the likelihood is of blah 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 blah. The point is simply that Jimmy Dore was one of the few people. Jimmy Dore was one of the few people back then taking this point of view. Now, the next clip that I want to take a look at is another one from Jimmy Dore, but going up against David Dorsey, and I want to take a look at, I really like this clip because it's got Lynn Greenwald in there and they discuss the same subject matter. However, this one's from April 19th, 2020.
The status.
Here we go. Ready? Here we go.
Hasn't been any leverage because you can complain and object to all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, politicians know that you're going to give them your undying and unconditional support because the other side is just mildly worse. What you're doing is you're ensuring that you will be ignored.
That was 10 years ago, and he was saying that about the Democratic voters. If you pledge your vote to a politician, what you're doing is you're guaranteeing that you'll be ignored. And that's what I was saying in the run-up to the 2016 election when everybody that I worked with at the Young Turks and everybody in the world was pledging their support to Hillary Clinton. And I'm like, no, now is when you have to make her come get your vote, because after the election, it's too late. I remember at the Young Turks, Jen's idea was we're going to fight her on day one. In fact, they were going to go protest her on the night of the election at her hotel in New York, but she didn't win. So my whole point is exactly what Glenn Greenwald said 10 years ago, that if we pledge our support to this party, we're going to keep you have no leverage. What do you say to that?
Well, look what happened. So Hillary lost, and the Democrats still didn't learn. So
This is correct.
That's so. I understand what you're saying, Jimmy, but at the same time, I totally would tell people to. I mean, you have to vote for Hillary because of how terrible Trump is. I mean, that's the bottom line, and that's just the like.
So this is the argument right here. This is the argument right here that you have to vote Democrat no matter what because the Republican is going to be worse. And so one of the things that I haven't heard anyone make the argument of is that are we saying that no matter what Democrat, no matter what, you could put Mussolini up at the top of the Democratic ticket. No matter what, no matter how big of a corporate Democrat they are, no matter how many awful things and awful positions that they've taken in the past, no matter what, we've got to vote for them. I mean, that's the argument being made right here.
Unfortunately, I have to say this: if Joe Biden's the nominee, you have to vote for Joe Biden over Trump. I mean, this is a guy who is essentially a fascist. I mean, you cannot allow President Trump to continue being president. I mean, which is why we have to get to impeachment, because there is no reason not to impeach this guy. If anybody else did what Trump did, they would be in jail. So the idea.
So let's before we get to impeachment, let's stay on.
Yeah.
So you disagree with Glenn Greenwald? You think you should pledge support, and that's a winning strategy?
Well, I think he's saying in terms of pledging support. I mean, how do you?
Here, let me play it again. Let me just play it again, and then we'll talk.
There hasn't been any leverage because you can complain and object to all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, politicians know that you're going to give them your undying and unconditional support because the other side is just mildly worse. What you're doing is you're ensuring that you will be ignored.
I mean, that's the strategy that that's 10 fucking years ago.
But it's not just about voting, it's about building movements. I mean, if there was no movement to say have a Green Party, president, then there's no reason to. I mean, look what happened. You got Trump. I mean, that's not for how terrible Trump is. Hillary would have been better. I mean, culturally.
Yeah, but do you think about you? But again, so you what you're prescribing is that the reason we got Trump, which is neoliberalism, which is Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden. So you're saying that the antidote to Trump is actually the thing that got us Trump.
It's not all about voting, though. You have to build movements. I mean, Noam Chomsky said you should vote for Hillary over Donald Trump.
I know.
So, I mean, we can play this game where we're picking and choosing people that we like, but ultimately you have to think about the overall impact on real people's lives. And yes, Hillary is not a great option. She's a horrible option, but Trump is a more horrible option. And you have to build movements in between elections to be able to actually bring the Justice Democrats did. And you have AOC now, you have Rashida Tlaib. I mean, these things don't happen overnight, right? You have to, it takes time to build these movements up. It takes time to support people like an AOC, like a Rashida Tlaib, like
So they're framing it in still looking at they're actually talking about voting for Biden or a third-party candidate, but they're still taking a look back at the Hillary Clinton election. And that's the one leg that guys like this have to stand on is, well, the Republicans are going to be so much worse. And what Jimmy Dore's saying, I think rightfully so, is that, well, in your opinion, the Republican is always going to be much worse, is always going to be much worse, And you're always going to publicly say that you always have to vote Democrat, and that completely takes all of your power away. So the corporate Democrats, they're going to continue to just try to appeal to Republicans because they know everybody on the left is going to vote for them no matter what. So if we know that everybody on the left, all progressives are going to vote for us no matter what, really all we got to do is appeal to Republicans. So we're going to be more like Republicans. We're going to go farther to the right, the center, but farther to the right. And this is a difficult argument. It's a very difficult argument. But you have to see what Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore are saying. That if you take this approach, that we're going to vote blue no matter who, then not only are you never going to get heard, but politically it makes sense for corporate Democrats to go farther to the right, to try to appeal to the right, because they know that they've already got this guy's crowd completely shored up.
Like Ilhan Omar, to actually have people that represent real Americans in Congress. Building those movements takes time. So it's not going to happen in one election. So ultimately, that's how I view this entire thing. When it comes to the actual vote between a Republican and a Democrat, I think you should always choose the Democrat. But in between elections, you should be helping to try and build movements so that you actually can create this kind of force that can enact real change.
So here's what Mike Gravel says. I just want to read this to you. He says, if Democrats nominate Joe Biden, he may win, and we'll have 4 years of weak, feckless Democratic leadership. And then in 4 years, he'll be defeated by a Republican Party even more openly white nationalists. If you nominate an Obama redux, you'll get a worse Trump redux. So this is what I've been trying. This has been the mission of this show since I read Listen Liberal, is to try to get people to think beyond one election cycle. That, by electing Barack Obama twice, that gave us Trump. By telling people to vote for Hillary Clinton, that got us Trump. And if we put Joe Biden in there and people's lives get worse in the next 4 years, which they will,
but they'll get worse under Trump.
And we'll get a worse, but then in 4 years, we'll get a worse Trump. The deal is, if we keep pledging our vote to the problem, we're never going to get a solution.
Look, Jimmy, I like you a lot.
And he's got a great point there. I mean, think about it. And we are doing the exact same thing that we did last time. But we didn't know it last time when we elected Barack Obama. We didn't know that we were getting centrists. We didn't know that we were getting somebody that would bail out Wall Street, that would kick 10 million people out of their homes, that would go up to Flint, Michigan, sip the water, and then fly out. We didn't know all these things. What they're saying is completely legitimate, that if we do this again, if we go down this road with the centrists again, we're just going to get the same problems that we had last time, which will manifest themselves into even a bigger problem with an even bigger fascist than Donald Trump.
But you also said that if Trump would win, they would build a big enough movement that in 4 years we'll have a big progressive like Bernie Sanders. Well, if we're doing this again and Trump wins again, I mean, what's like clearly we can't be predicting the future, which is why you have to do what you can.
2020 hasn't happened yet, David.
David,
2020 is still coming up.
David, 2020 hasn't happened, and Bernie Sanders is right now the leading candidate running for president. Do you think that would be happening if Hillary Clinton? Wait a minute. Do you think that would be happening if Hillary Clinton was president?
No.
No, of course not. We'd be going back. We'd have a solid. We'd have a solid.
We also don't know if Bernie's going to win.
Right, we don't. But I'm saying we also would have a solid Republican Senate and a solid Republican House. We'd be in more wars. We'd be in Venezuela. Things would be getting. I mean.
We don't necessarily know what would happen under
and then
Hillary
we'd all have
presidency.
to rally around Hillary in 4 more years. Nobody would be allowed to primary her. We'd have that again. So again, I like you. That's why I'm having this. I don't like to have.
And so this debate, this is one of the reasons that I wanted to look at it historically, because back during the Hillary Clinton election, it was very easy for people to say, well, if you do not elect Hillary Clinton, all of these bad things would happen. But now that we can look at it in a historical context and see that, yes, Trump was awful, Trump has been awful, but if we didn't have Trump, there's no way that we could have the medicine, which was Bernie Sanders. And so it's just so interesting to see this discussion in a historical context now that we can see what the effects actually have been.
Have these kind of conversations with people I don't like, so that's why I'm having this conversation. But we've been doing what you're saying to do for the last 40 years, and every 4 years now Barack Obama openly admits he's a Republican. He said my policies are moderate Republican. That's how you shift the Overton window to the right. So by keep doing this, by pledging our vote to corporatists like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, and if they know they have your vote, just like Glenn Greenwald said 10 years ago, it just keeps getting worse. So we've been doing not what Glenn Greenwald said, but what you've been saying, and it got us Trump.
But I don't think it's getting worse now. I think you see the Justice Democrats. You have to understand how the impact that someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has had on the conversation. I mean, we're talking about the Green New Deal. I don't think that would be a topic of conversation if you didn't have her in Congress. So you have this movement now where, yes, the window for the past 40 years has been moving to the right, but I think AOC and other Congress people like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, they are moving the window now more to the left. And
yes,
again, as I said, these changes don't happen overnight. Like, it's not going to happen with one presidential election. You have to act.
All right, so now that we've kind of had a chance to see both sides of the argument, I want to take a look at some of the other popular pundits now and how the debate is being framed around Vote Blue No Matter Who. This is a clip from Krystal and Sedar Rising talking about Kyle Kulinski. I thought this clip was good because it puts all the viewpoints in one video.
All right, friend of the show, Kyle Kulinski, found himself a little bit of a brouhaha online, caused a little bit of an imbroglio.
Really good words.
I'm dropping all the words I love here. My GRE is coming back. So Kyle tweeted, quote, "As a left-winger who will not vote for Biden, I want you to know I'm 100% okay with you blaming me if Trump wins a second term. I mean it. Blame me. Then get to thinking real hard how you're going to get me to support your candidate next time. Maybe even ask me, and I'll tell you." So this is an interesting thing. I mean, Kyle is really drawing a total line in the sand, taking a bit of a different position than some others. And he really he took it online in response to this.
And gave it back, I might say.
And gave it right back. He didn't particularly care. That's what we love about him here on our show. But it's fascinating the level of vitriol that was directed at Kyle. And I think the most pernicious one that was directed at him the most was when Rabia Chaudhry told him, to be a white guy who really won't hurt like some of us will. And again, I just think it's one of those things where that's how they framed it to you in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's white privilege. In order to say that you wouldn't, when, as Kyle pointed out, and as I hope he got it from this show, the people who don't vote are disproportionately working class of all colors, of all different ethnic groups.
I've been thinking a lot about this because, the higher you go up on the income scale, the more likely you are to vote. Why?
Yes.
Because if you're like a rich,
works for you,
if you're a rich white person, you're like, yes, I own this system. I get to have the luxury of multiple choices within the system, all of which are good for me and benefit me. Not to mention just the structural hurdles for people of lower means to be able to get to the polls. Of course, the restrictions that are put in place, but also just like logistical challenges of getting off work in time and being able to make it to the polls. Like, those are real things. But there's a more systemic issue here of, if you're not a privileged person, you look at this system that isn't structured for you, that doesn't benefit you, and you go, why should I bother? Or you actively protest that system by actively withholding your vote. I mean, this is one of the things that I really worry about with the end of the Sanders campaign, frankly, is you had a lot of people, a lot of young people, a lot of working class people who saw Bernie Sanders Sanders as a means, as a vessel to have some part of their lives actually reflected in the reality of American government. And it takes an emotional investment. It takes an emotional toll to actually believe, to abandon your cynicism and actually believe that that is possible. This is not a privileged position, but we also know, like, this is always the tactic. Either, you're white privilege, or you're racist, or you don't care about vulnerable communities. None of it is making an affirmative case. It's all just trying to shame voters into doing the thing that they think is the right thing to do. Kyle's just not going to have it.
It's also ridiculous, these like multi-millionaire people who are like, so privileged. It's like, get out of here. You grifters are doing better than anybody else.
A TV show or like a Harvard degree
Calling
or whatever.
out somebody very specifically who will probably rage tweeting at us after this segment. But you look at this, and like you said about power, this is what it all comes down to. Do people genuinely believe that Trump would have just rolled over and endorsed Jeb Bush and went to go and campaign for him? No, he would have burned the house to the ground. He would have been like, I'll run third party and all that, and they would have had.
All right, so that's Krystal Wall's perspective. Let's go ahead and get Sam Sedar's perspective on Kyle Kulinski and the entire issue of itself.
Too. And what AOC is. Because Kyle does not have, first of all, he's right to say blame me. Because at the very least then, if his plan succeeds, which is Biden doesn't win, right? Because for his plan to succeed, Biden has to lose.
Right.
Because if Biden wins, then the party says, okay, we definitely don't need Kyle Kulinski. He's completely out of the picture. And I don't mean to pick on Kyle, but I'm just saying in terms. So.
But with that being said, I mean, we've already established in this debate that taking your perspective of voting blue no matter who already does that. They've already said, you know what, they don't matter. And in actuality, it's even worse than that, because not only are they saying that they don't matter, but they are saying that we already have this vote so far in the bag that we can go ahead and start trending over as much as possible to the right side of the perspective, to the Republicans' viewpoint, to try to pick off some of those voters. And so I think that's a little intellectually dishonest the way you frame that.
For Kyle's plan to win, to succeed, two things have to happen. Biden has to lose, and there has to be a perception, at least, that the reason why Biden lost was because Kyle didn't vote for him. And obviously not just Kyle, but everybody that Kyle
he represents.
Yeah. And in 2016, the plan was Clinton had.
Do you think that anybody in any of the corporate Democrats, anybody in the party elite, are sitting around saying to one another that, you know what, these progressives, we really need to extend an olive branch. We really need to get them on our side and get them to vote for us if you're taking the perspective of Sam Sedar, saying you gotta vote blue no matter who because the Republicans are a lot worse. Do you honestly think that any of them are going to say to themselves, now, on the contrary, with this entire brouhaha with Kyle Kulinski, how many of them do you think are sitting around saying to themselves, did you hear what happened on Twitter? Have you seen those YouTube videos? Kyle Kulinski, he's got a few 100,000 followers. Maybe we need to take notice of what's going on here.
Has to lose, and then I'm going to pretend like I wasn't responsible for Clinton winning, and then somehow magic happens. At least Kyle has the two steps correct. Mm-hmm. The second step has to happen. It won't, just like it didn't happen last time. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Joe Biden. So we have an example of the failure of that strategy. And part of the problem is that there's not enough.
Again, very intellectually dishonest, but because we heard in this clip. Here, let's see if we can get that again. Jimmy Dore makes the point that if Hillary Clinton would have won last time, we wouldn't have Bernie Sanders doing as well as he was when this clip was recorded.
I think you should always choose the Democrat, but in between elections, you should be helping to try and build movements so that you actually can create this kind of force that can enact real change.
So here's what Mike Gravel says. I just want to read this to you. He's
go ahead and keep going with this one.
Overwhelming evidence that, and there won't be this time either, just like there wasn't last time, that they actually caused the loss.
See, that's the point that I'm trying to say. They're still, and they're partially right. This is a hard moment, right? They're still of the mindset that the base, the progressive base, is going to fall in line. And I'm going to be real with you guys. We did in 2016. The majority of the progressive base, who didn't show up, and they're not all progressive, I want to make that very clear, was working class. And that's really what the issue is. The progressive base represents working class interests, but it doesn't necessarily represent all of the working class.
Correct.
And so you had groups of voters in the Rust Belt, Pennsylvania, otherwise, who did not turn out in key states that they took for granted. But do not equate these two things. Jacobin readers are not always factory workers.
So we kind of see that debate. We see that side of the point. Now let's take a look at Krystal.
I think we've also got to realize that this whole vote blue no matter who thing is a complete con. Because what do we see? Biden's already on TV with Lawrence O'Donnell saying he'd veto Medicare for all. I mean, they spit in the faces of this movement of young people and working class people who believe in these principles. They call them brown shirts. They say they're toxic Bernie bros. And then demand that they just all turn around and pledge to vote for Joe no matter what. Well, I don't think that we should be so easy in giving up our votes like that. Look, these young people have organized around the Green New Deal, have organized around Medicare for all. The moment that they say, you know what, Joe, it's fine. You can spit in our faces. You can promise to veto Medicare for all, but we're still going to turn out and vote for you, is the moment that you lose any kind of power in this situation. And look, it is a grim situation if Joe Biden is the nominee, but the least that this movement can do is hold on to some modicum of power to say, no, you don't just get our vote. You have to at least try to earn it. And I think that's a really important message moving forward.
But Krystal, I got to ask, what's our alternative? I mean, I don't think it's tenable for progressives to threaten to vote for Trump. I think that's nuts. I would never do that.
I would never vote for Donald Trump either, but you can leave it blank. As of today, I'm an undecided voter because here's the thing, Jake. Donald Trump is awful. The next Republican will be awful. And if they always can say, look, you've got to vote for us no matter what, you've got no other choice, then they're always going to treat us like this because you have no power in that situation. If you're just going to show up and vote for them anyway. So I know people aren't going to want to hear that, but I think that is the reality of the situation that we face right now.
Krystal, you brought up really fast the voter turnout and actually whether or not they're going to appeal to younger voters. And actually,
so it was a much easier case for people like Sam Sedar to make back during the Clinton election. Now, not so much. So let's take a look at one. Let's take a look at David Pakman and his view.
Vote blue no matter who, here we go now, is not the same as vote Biden over Trump. All right? Let's think this through. We've got to understand this before things swirl out of control. There's a very reasonable debate to be had about Joe Biden's policies.
And so what he's trying to do now is he's saying, well, vote blue no matter who is not really vote blue no matter who. He's trying to win the argument by saying that the toxic thing, vote blue no matter who, is not really vote blue no matter who. Trying to win the argument by saying that which he's arguing against is not really what it is.
When Joe Biden says he supports the Green New Deal as a framework, what does that mean versus saying he would push for specifically the Green New Deal? Oh, that's a debate. That's a great debate to have. But we can't equate vote blue no matter who to saying I believe Biden would be better than Trump specifically. And there are many supporters who have been correctly tweeting me. I want to be very clear. You guys are right when you say, David, vote blue no matter who relinquishes agency. It says to the DNC, you don't have to earn my vote because I'm voting blue no matter who. I'm going to vote for whoever has a D next to their name, no matter who they are or what their platform is. That's absolutely correct. That being said, that's not what I or many others are advocating for. I have never said vote blue no matter who. And in fact, I've said quite the opposite. All along, I've said I evaluate candidates and decide who's better. It's not a party analysis. And then I say, do I prefer this person to Donald Trump, or do I prefer Donald Trump? Vote blue no matter.
That is just intellectually dishonest because you're always going to prefer the Democrat to the Republican. Always. No matter what. So you're always going to have to vote for the Democrat no matter what. In other words, you're always going to have to vote blue no matter who. I mean, with stuff like this, I mean, I don't understand why. I mean, he can't possibly think that his audience is that stupid. His audience is that stupid to say, oh, well, I guess you're right. Maybe sometimes I'll think the Democrat is worse than the Republican. And so it's not real. I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous argument.
No matter who would be saying, I'm not evaluating candidates. I'm merely going to vote based on whether someone is a Democrat. That's not what I do. Biden is better than Trump on a number of different.
So what Democrat would not be better than Trump? I mean, what Democrat would have you take pause and say, well, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't just vote blue no matter who.
Issues. I've talked about a lot of them. And of course, all of these are up for debate. On judges, including the Supreme Court, I don't want Trump choosing Ruth Bader Ginsburg's replacement.
And this is the argument that they always fall back on, is the Supreme Court. Well, what about the Supreme Court? Well, what about the Supreme Court? Okay, all right, if that is your only argument and you want to relinquish all power that you have and you want to ensure that we have a candidate like Joe Biden time and time again, and that the Democratic Party stays this party of institutionalized corporate Democrats, because you're going to have to vote blue no matter who, fine.
I want Biden choosing Ruth Bader Ginsburg's replacement. If you would prefer it be Bernie, great. That's not the choice. The choice is Biden or Trump, and I prefer Biden. On climate, Biden supports the Green New Deal as a framework. Trump doesn't. Trump thinks climate change is a hoax created by the Chinese. Biden's better on that. Taxes. Is Biden's tax plan as progressive as Bernie's? No. Is Biden's tax plan better than Trump's?
Of course, Joe Biden's going to say, I support it as a framework. What's he going to say? I don't support it. I don't support the Green New Deal. We all know Joe Biden is a corporate Democrat. He's going to do what's best for the corporations. But, I'm getting kind of off of the topic of the actual argument that I want to live stream about is this vote blue no matter who.
Yes. On healthcare, is Biden's tax plan the progressive gold standard? No, not even close. Is it way better than what Trump tried to do a couple of years ago? Of course it is. On diplomacy, is Biden an embarrassment around the world?
So, again, he's going to go through all the reasons why you have to vote blue no matter who, because the alternative is so much worse. So let's do one more leading left-wing pundit, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
I keep hearing over and over that the most important thing is to beat Donald Trump, that we must vote blue no matter who. The Democratic Party is hyper-focused on this. The left-wing media obsesses over it. Candidates start off their speeches with it. This is how it always goes. Evil will win unless you vote for us. The world's morals are at risk. The only thing that matters is defending our values. And you know what? They're right. But they're wrong about who we have to defeat. It is becoming increasingly clearer and clearer that who we have to beat no matter what is the establishment. The establishment on both sides of the aisle have turned their back on American values and have sold us out to billionaires and international corporations. The American values we have cherished for generations, the value of the American dream, is gone. It's been destroyed by greed. My generation and younger have had to kiss goodbye the idea of owning a home with a white picket fence, having multiple kids, 2 cars, the college education we were able to pay for by working a summer job. Even the idea of having a stay-at-home parent is long gone. Instead, younger generations have had to create a sharing economy where they don't own a thing and a gig economy which will leave them with nothing to retire on. Our political leaders keep us focused on emotional, moral issues such as immigration, abortion, racism, misogyny, so that our attention isn't on what's really happening. The people in Washington and those who fund their campaigns are running off with our money. They are robbing us, and stopping them is the only thing that should matter.
And I think that's kind of the point right there. Is that this whole vote blue no matter who strategy assumes that just continuing to do the same thing over and over and over is going to somehow get us a different result, and it's just not going to happen. So, anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this live stream. Put comments below, subscribe if you'd like to.